and you hold it, release, and cook it, count 1, 1,000, 2, 1,003. And the idea is that when you throw it, there's not enough time for the person you're throwing at to pick it up and throw it back at you, right? Thankfully, I did not cook those grenades, and I talked to some of the Marine Anglico that was on the ground there, and they said my frag just rolled by him. And thankfully, he had enough time to get out of the way. And that's me. That's on me. And I remember distinctly after that event, you came in, we were in the platoon hut, and you asked us, you were going around whose fault is this? And I think Jeremy raised his hands it's my fault. And Tyler, no, it's not your fault. And various people no, it's my fault. And you're no, it's my fault. And you went on to talk about why, and you assumed responsibility. And I didn't know it at the time, being just a young kid, watching all this, taking it all in, but it had a formative impact on me of assuming command and responsibility when you are the leader, because the buck stops with you. And just taking unconscious notes about that interaction. But that had a huge formative. That was a very formative experience for me. And it parallels exactly what we were just talking about with that first op in Solder City. I would love to talk to Mike about it one day. The next time I see him.
Yeah. We'll get you guys both in here. We'll do a full debrief. So those operations in Solder City, though, after that. So just a couple things. Solder City had been a total disaster for years. So that was 2008. It had been a disaster since 2003. The enemy was in control of that area the entire time. The Army finally said they're going to do something about it. The Army started building a wall. The enemy ferociously attacked. It was devastating. And you guys rolled in there after the first op. Obviously things went bad. And then you guys got in your rhythm. You figured out, you corrected your mistakes, and you guys started executing these missions in support of the Army and started killing a lot of bad guys. And I want to say it was about 6 weeks. After about 6 weeks, the enemy surrendered. For all practical purposes, the people that were leading the insurgents inside that area said, okay, yeah, we're done. We're done. So a problem that had been a problem for 5 years was over in about 6 weeks. And again, I'm breezing through that because you guys did some harrowing missions in there and took a lot of risk to go in there and make that happen. But my point is that it was risky, yes, but very effective in subduing a previously just savage enemy that did not care.
I don't know of too many things in this life that are good things that are without risk. And that goes to every facet of life, of business, of combat, of space exploration. All good things have a lot of risk and a lot of hard work to get there. And certainly combat operations there were no different.
Now, at what point did you start thinking about, going to become a doctor?
That was in Romani.
So when you did your initial application, it was between deployments. Is that right?
Yes.
So the story that I mentioned earlier of me being like, I don't know why you'd want to be a doctor. It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Being a team guy is the best thing in the world. Why would you trade in an M60 for a scalpel? So we actually had that conversation in between.
We did. I remember it very well. John, I don't know why you want to do this, but I will support you. And you had my back. Like I would never want to do this. But good on you for wanting to do this, and I'll support you in every way. And that letter you read at the start of this brought back some memories. Very powerful words and undeserving, kind words. I had not heard that in many years.
When did you find out you got picked up? Was that before deployment?
That was during deployment. So I decided I was going to go into State 21. For those who don't know, that's the enlisted to officer commissioning program, so that I could go to medical school. And I knew I wanted to do it after coming out of Ramadi. But I thought it was poor form, and really, I couldn't bear to leave my platoon especially after one deployment. Mm-hmm. I mean, what is that? I already feel bad enough that I've only done 2 deployments, and I am aware that I am a representative of the SEAL teams in what I do now, which unfortunately, I say unfortunately because I don't appreciate the spotlight of what I have to do as an astronaut, but I am a representative of the teams. And to me, that's kind of crazy. Like, I do not deserve to be a representative of the teams. I'm a 2-pump jump. You want me to be a representative of the teams? And I do it with honor and seriousness, and I will never do anything to disgrace the teams. I hold and covet that honor more than anything, and I will defend it at all costs. But just being here is just like, people will see it and see me as a representative, and it's humbling in many ways, and I take it seriously. So I wanted to at least get 2 deployments in, because I feel like that's like the least respectable amount of work you should do as a team, guys. At least 2 deployments. So yeah, the decision was made. I'm like, all right, I'll put in this I'll time this package in so that I'm get a decision yes or no as I'm coming off of the 2nd deployment. And that's what happened. I found out either maybe just before we left, or maybe during deployment, that I was accepted into the program.
And so you come home from that deployment. You guys had a little bit of time to decompress during that deployment, because the Solder City fighting was in the beginning of the deployment, relatively close.
Correct.
You guys got done, and then it was, kind of what I said earlier. It was, hey, back to some outstations, mm-hmm. Relatively mellow compared to either A, Ramadi, or B, Solder City.
And I mean, not to dismiss what the work we did and the work that other people did, but the combat operations intensity was night and day difference. I mean, we were working at an outpost in Rupa and doing a lot of long-range reconnaissance missions on side-by-sides, which are basically high-powered tactical go-karts, mm-hmm. going hundreds of miles and just traversing the desert in these, getting paid to do it.
Right.
But it was definitely different, because I fired my rifle almost every single operation in Ramadi. I can probably count on one hand, like, the times I didn't. Like, when there was a mission where I didn't fire. Same with in Solder City. I don't think there was a single operation we did where I didn't fire my rifle. But in Rupa, afterwards, I don't think I fired it once, mm-hmm. except on the range to make sure it was sighted in. So it was just a different contrast. Yeah. People had different experiences based on where they are.
Yeah, and there's different missions. There's different things that people have to do, and I say this to I'll have guys come up to me and say, I was in the Marine Corps from 1994 to 1998, and I never did anything, and I feel guilty. And I'm like, hey, you did what the country needed you to do. You did what America needed you to do. That's Absolutely. What you did. And so you get assigned different missions in any unit, and you do what you're assigned to do, and you do it to the best of your ability. And in this case, it's a little bit of a nice little decompression, riding around the desert in ATVs with relatively low threat, and then you come home from that deployment. And now it's time to go to college. How old are you at this point?
Let's see. So this is 2008. So doing public math here. So
didn't mean to put you on the spot there, rocket scientist.
I was 24.
So you're 24 years 25. Old. Yeah, I went to college, and you went to the University of San Diego.
I did.
I went to the University of San Diego. I was a 28-year-old. No, I was a 30-year-old, completely military institutionalized grown man with no like ability to fit in with civilians when I showed up to college. And so it was awesome. And what'd you major in?
Math.
And did you know at this point you want to kick ass, get great grades, and get into a really good medical school?
Yes. That was the plan to so the program I was accepted to, the Seaman Animal program, was specifically to go to medicine. So, and the Navy they take a huge gamble because they're accepting you for this program, putting a lot of money in you, and you're not even accepted to college or medical school. So they're hoping that you will do well enough in college to be accepted to medical school. And if it was the same as you only have 3 years to do an undergraduate degree. So you get squash a 4-year degree in 3 years. And for me, I also had to get the prerequisites to go to medical school. So that was, full-time status, working summer school, working winter, doing winter classes.
Did you have to go to ROTC?
I did. And I also gave up parking tickets to pay for tuition.
You're one of those guys.
The
world finally loses respect for Johnny Kim in some way.
You know what? It was a humbling job on it. I think it was good for my soul. So ROTC can be hard for former enlisted because you might be a battle-hardened veteran. No one cares. People care, but you have to suck in, take that humble pill, and realize that you are just another midshipman with the other 18, 19-year-old kids. And for some people, it's hard to do that, right? Because you have to suck in your pride, take that humble pill, and just follow and do these things that are, I don't want to say dumb, but kind of.
Well, they're aimed at young, inexperienced, untrained officer candidates that have no experience in the military. That's who they're aimed at.
Yes.
They're not aimed at guys that have been in teams on 2 combat deployments, responsible for all kinds of stuff. They're not aimed at you. And so when they hit you, they sting. If you let them.
But in that respect, it is an opportunity to exercise humility and to be able to suck in your pride, because that is in the same spirit of when someone says or does something to you that gets you emotional, and you having the mental fortitude to step back, put your own emotions aside, to communicate to the person to find common ground. In the same way, that's how I saw that opportunity to suck in to get that practice that humility. And I wasn't always good at it, because sometimes you're fed up like mustering at 0,500 when the muster is really at like 0,700. You're like, why am I here for 2 hours? Because maybe the squad leader put 15 minutes of grace time before like the company commander, before the fake like ROTC leader or whatever. And then eventually works out that you're like 2 hours before you're there, standing there 2 hours of detention before you need to be there. Like little things like that. And for some, especially I saw some former enlisted having a really hard time keeping their thoughts to themselves.
Team guys are even worse.
Yes. So it is an exercise in humility. And giving parking tickets was the same way, because the state 21 was very generous, but it only gives $10,000 of tuition. But it gives you time. I'm not trying to dismiss the benefits of the programs. I'm very grateful for that. But I had to make up an extra $20,000, and the University of San Diego was kind enough to offer me a job. Hey, you give out parking tickets for 8 hours a week, and we will cover the rest. So I gave out parking tickets, and some may see that like, oh wow, you went from doing these combat operations to giving parking tickets. Like, well, for me, it was an exercise in humility, and just you should never think you're too good to do a job. And I think you should be like that in everything you do. Be a forever new guy is what I try to emulate. And I don't mean as in you shouldn't step up to the role and be a leader and delegate appropriately, but never think that you are above taking out the trash, or that you're above not respecting the secretary or the lowest junior enlisted, right? I mean, I was there, you were there, we were both E1s. You're the bottom of the food chain, mopping floors, taking out the trash. And I remember what Tony Frady said to me when I first showed up. He's like, never think you're too good.